Friends, good evening. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your channel, the Gnostic Institute of Esoteric Magic. And today we initiate the cycle of influences of the constellation of Taurus. When it comes to the next few minutes that we're going to spend together, we're going to learn many things about Taurus. We're going to learn about Taurus, the constellation. We're going to learn about the attributes and characteristics of the natives of Taurus. And we are going to learn how to work with the forces of Taurus themselves. To that purpose, Rachel is going to be the one who explains and facilitates a beautiful practice at the very end of today's exercise. And just as a brief refresher, let's remember where is it that the influences of Taurus land within the human constitution. Master Samael Aumveor tells us Taurus is the zodiac sign that governs the creative larynx, the wonderful womb where the word is gestated. And he says we must comprehend the material in this lesson. To that effect, he shares with us a very peculiar anecdote, and he says the word is closely related to the four elements of nature. And therefore, in the ancient temples of mysteries, the initiates were prohibited from speaking about the old catastrophes in ancient Arcadia for fear of bringing them into existence again. Now, of course, in our current condition, we don't find ourselves in a situation where speaking about catastrophes immediately triggers them. But what the principle of correspondence tells us, as above, so below, is that if the power of the word is so intense that the masters are exceedingly careful in the use of their words, then we must make an effort to start emulating the masters. Because evidently, every time that we make use of the power of our creative word, we are generating consequences, effects, that we may not be familiar with. And we must keep this present. When it comes to the creative power of the word, there are 7 orders of worlds, all of them that were created by the power of the creative word, music and sound. And these 7 cosmoses cascade as the flow of the ray of creation emerges from that unmanifested, uncreated space to this realm of substance and those realms that exist below this particular realm where you and I move, exist, and we carry our consciousness. The first cosmos is submerged within the uncreated light of the Absolute. When we say cosmos, it is possible that you will create some mental image of the vastness of the universe and the stars and the galaxies, etc. But I want you at this level of study to understand the word cosmos as something that means order of worlds. Order of worlds. So that first order of worlds is submerged within the uncreated light of the Absolute. But as that ray of creation continues, the second order of worlds, the second cosmos that crystallizes, is the one that is made of all of the worlds in the infinite space. If we think of all of those worlds that exist there, all of those human existences, everywhere where there are affairs of life taking place, in this galaxy, in neighboring galaxies, in galaxies that are made of matter, in galaxies that are made of antimatter, where the laws are completely different and unknown to us. All of those worlds together, they make up the second order of worlds. And so as the ray of creation continues, it crystallizes then the third order of worlds. And that is, Samael tells us, the total sum of all the suns in the starry space. So everywhere where there is a sun that is hosting a solar system with all of its planets, asteroids, and moons, that constitutes the third order of worlds. But the ray of creation continues. And notice that these are cosmoses that crystallize concentrically as if they were spheres, one inside the other. So we get to this third order of worlds where we have the sum of all the suns. And when we get into the fourth cosmos, what we see is our sun. But it's our sun, not only that bright star that illuminates us, but the one that influences us with all of its laws and with all of its dimensions. And because this sun has an archetype, it is a superior being that is also responsible for the guidance of many other souls, many archetypes within its particular reach. Then the fifth order of worlds is made up of all of the planets in our solar system. And as we look into the planets, then it is perhaps a little easy to infer that the sixth cosmos, the sixth order of worlds, is going to be this planet Earth, in which today we exist. But it's not only the planet as this mass of rock and water and gases that is orbiting around the sun. It is also this organism with its own archetype and all of its influences, its 7 dimensions, its regions, and of course the infinite number of beings that exist here within this planet. And following the path of the law of the Ebta para Parshinok, which is a law that brings harmony and order throughout all of creation, then there is a 7th order of worlds. And below our feet, below the crust of the earth, we find then the 7 concentric spheres of the infernal worlds that are all submerged within the mineral kingdom in our planet. Notice the magnitude that encompasses the power of the creative word. When that first moment initiated and those great beings came together and sang in a choir, they allowed for that flow of the ray of creation to emerge from the absolute and for us to find ourselves in one of these many concentric cosmoses. Samael Aunveor says, music, the verb, placed by the logos, in 7 musical octaves, it keeps the universe firm in its march. So just like a symphony of creation, like a symphony of nature, all of these notes come together with their rhythms and their harmonies and enable creation to flow and manifest in ways that these cosmoses not only exist within each other, but they do not create interference. It is harmony, it is rhythm, it is equanimity. It is a way of existence that enables not only the flow of creation, but the growth of all of the beings across all of the cosmoses so that they can continue ever expanding in their wisdom and in their light so that they can flow from the most recondite, deep regions of these realms of creation into the manifestation of that absolute unmanifested space, uncreated light. Samael mentions 8 octaves, and these 8 octaves, they are crystallized in the keyboard of a grand piano. And each one of the notes is where we see an aspect of creation crystallizing. So that first order of worlds, if we start from a high note, a high-pitched do, that is that first cosmos. We hear that do, and as the ray of creation emerges, we can see those sounds descending harmonically down these 7 notes, following into C, where we see the second cosmos, down into La, into Sol, into Fa, into Mi, when we see the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th order of worlds, all of them coming together. By then we get to the note Re, where we see then the seventh order of worlds, and then everything returns to the absolute with the note C, that central note within the keyboard itself. This is so wonderful, because with us knowing that the power of the word has implications like this, then it invites us to be harmonious in the way that we use our words, to be melodic, aesthetically pleasing, not only as we're speaking to each other in the use of the word that sounds, but also in the word that it is written. And as Samael explains to us, he tells us, our Gnostic students must never forget what the three forces called Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are. He says these three forces constitute the sacred Triyamashikamno. The sacred Triyamashikamno is the law of three. And everywhere where we see this three, there is a creation that emerges. There is a creation that takes place. But these three forces are not outside of us. It is true that these three forces are responsible for the emission of that ray of creation and for everything that we can perceive with our senses, both the physical senses and those senses that many of you are starting to develop. Well, we can perceive them. But these three forces exist deep within each and every one of us, because the Holy Triyamashikamno is not only just the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It is the holy negation, the holy conciliation, the holy affirmation. We must comprehend this at some point, because if we want enlightenment, if we are making efforts to meditate, if we are invoking our Divine Mother Kundalini, asking for the elimination of our defects, if we are working to transmute our creative energies, if we're even attempting the work on that arcanum, that work that is the work of the super dynamic of love. I mean, if we're here gathering this knowledge because we're seeking to incarnate the innermost, then there has to be a reconciliation inside of us that must happen at the level of thought, at the level of sentiment, at the level of our vitality. There must be a reconciliation that is expressed through our gestures, through our actions. At some point, our willful impulses cannot be those of desires. They must be the ones of our own individual and particular spirit. And we must reconcile that, because even though we long for all these things, for enlightenment and incarnating the being and sometimes faculties and power, whatever that is, then we have to start making an effort so that our daily actions are not opposite, are not in contradiction to these longings. If we're using our words, and I know that this is easy to say it's difficult to put it in practice, but this is what we have to make the effort. If we are using our words and we're using them to judge other people, to compare, to criticize, to be accusing them, to make pretend because we don't want to address things up front, if we continue repeating the same mistakes, then it becomes very difficult to make that internal progress. I mean, and this is a change that we must make an effort to start right now. When Samael tells us that we must learn to live from moment to moment, he means exactly that. I mean, this change that we are seeking, this is not something that we just have to leave for later. I mean, we cannot expect, it would be silly of us to think that we can become holy overnight. With some exceedingly rare exceptions, it never happens. So we must empower our consciousness so that we can retrieve our mind and our sexuality from this conflict. This conflict that is looking in one direction of divinity and performing in another direction when it comes to desires and passions, and even forgetting at times that we are trying to get this work done. We must strive to behave as an instrument of the being, as if we were living as an imitation of Christ. And so, again, the holy affirmation, the holy negation, and the holy conciliation. Let's think beyond this idea of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit and see that these three forces, it's a conciliation, a neutral force between a positive and a negative one that projects and one that receives. But Samael does something when he shares with us this wisdom of Taurus. And he brings forth some concepts that were presented by Georgy Gurdjieff. Likely many of you have heard of Gurdjieff. And he brings these concepts of the surp or theos, the surp skiros, and the surp athanatos. Those of you who have been practicing with the Great Arcanum, you may be familiar, as you have heard about the procedural arcanum, that there are a series of mantras in which we say, Thanaton, this is what we are invoking. We're invoking that conciliation, that liberation, that neutralization, so that those forces harmonize within us as we're doing this work. So this must make sense a lot to you as you see it. And when you see this word surp or serp, this means divine. It implies that it is a concept of divinity. So when we consider the being, our spirit, as that driving force within each and every one of us, we could easily think of the being and this force that is surp or theos, an affirmation, an impulse, something that projects, that is positive, something that is moving the consciousness to work. Then there is the surp skiros. Skiros as negation, resistance, negative. That is not something that has to do with bad. When we think negative, bad. No, that is too superficial. In this case, we can think of the consciousness as surp skiros, as an internal force moved by the being that is setting opposition, negation to the inferior thoughts, that is negating the opportunity to inferior emotions, inferior actions. And then we have surp athanatos as conciliation, liberation, and neutralization. But within you, within me, here, with us here and now, is our Divine Mother, Kundalini, as the one that helps bring balance with the elimination of our psychological aggregates. As the one that, as our Divine Mother Nature, helps takes these forces and knowing exactly what must be done, brings them into harmony, conciliating them within our physical form, within our ethereal form, so that our physical body can benefit from all of those exercises for transmutation and every askokin that is liberated with the elimination of our defects. This holy Triamashikamno exists as much outside of us, should you choose to see it that way, as much as it exists within us. In every atom, in every particle, in every tissue, in every organ, in every little bit of intelligence that exists within our own physicality. And so, when it comes to the creative process, Samael says, the creative process of the cosmic, common, holy Triamashikamno, that divine three, began with the sexual connubio of the word. The Elohim were divided into three groups within every temple to sing according to the liturgy of fire. This divine Elohim, remember, El means God. El is the name of the manifestation of God in the sphere of the innermost. Eloah is goddess, and Elohim is a plural form of gods and goddesses. So these are divine beings that are androgynous in nature. Within them, there is a perfect balance between those masculine and feminine forces. They work, and as they come together, they exercise, moved by the law, willful polarization, so that when they come together, those forces unite and harmonize. And as a priest and a priestess before the altar, plus a choir of androgynous Elohim, they started chanting these rituals of fire. And what the great legends say is that the womb of chaos became fecund, and the universe on the spiraling electric hurricane came and fecundated the universe. The universe was then born. And Samael continues and says, angels create with the power of the word. We must awaken consciousness of the word in the creative larynx. And there is responsibility in words, and playing with the verb is a sacrilege. The sexual fire of Kundalini becomes creative with the power of the word. And so a harsh word will haunt us. And later, Samael says, falls on the one who spoke it like a lightning bolt of revenge. He says there is not only fornication with the sexual act, the misuse of the word is also fornication. And the fornication of the word creates larvae and it creates misfortune. If when we say larvae, you immediately think of worms and maggots, that is a good visualization. But let's expand on that. Because in its origin, larvae means evil spirits. And these evil spirits, we cannot just think that they're just demonic. What we will tell you with that is that when we fornicate with the use of the word, we start creating mental formations that have a soul. But the soul of those mental formations is the very same inferior passion, the desire that created them. Many of those disintegrate. But depending on how much energy is put behind those forms, many of them prevail for an indefinite amount of time, creating influences over the one who created it and over everyone who shares affinity with those same desires and inferior passions. So yes, as a consequence, misfortunes, because those are irresponsible creations, and the archons of the law will hold us accountable for everything that we possibly deserve. Actually, the effect of this is so intense that it goes from one life to the next. Samael even tells us, have you ever seen the birth of a monstrous child? That is the karma of speaking falsehoods in previous lives, of lying. And so he says, we greatly admire the substance of sincerity. A liar could never reach the White Island. A liar can never reach those higher realms of creation. And because he is giving us this wisdom, of course, at the level of study that he's giving us this information, he wants to make sure that our foundation is solid so that we can learn to discern. So he says, there are a large number of schools in today's world that try to perform these very same miracles through the use of mental force, but without counting at all on the approval of the laws of destiny. These are mental creations that are being forced into creation itself without seeking the approval of those great masters, archons of the law. And he says that is simply pure and legitimate black magic. The Christ mind works well with the law. And so when we are moved to these mental formation, to these mental creations, trying to perform these miracles, just move because we think that we are so powerful or because others are trying to move us into that space, all of that is then deficient creation. Mental force is deficient when not working with the force of the innermost. And the theurgist, he is the one who learns to work with these sidereal forces, with beings from planets and constellations, these archetypes that are great masters of creation. Well, the theurgist will use mental force, but united with the innermost. This is why every time that we are seeking to do works, whether these are works of elemental magic or works of theurgy, we always invoke the innermost, and we always ask that these things that we ask for, that they manifest according to the law. When they don't, we simply accept that decree and we pay reverence to the law and we move on with no need to complain. Because when we send out dark mental waves, and we do that more often than maybe we would like to admit, When we send out dark mental waves and where others are doing that intentionally, the masters tell us those dark mental waves, they do not reach where they are sent. Because in the subtle world, there are a multitude of aerial elementals. These are elementals from the element of air that trap them and intercept their path. Innumerable forces in space deflect or disintegrate destructive mental waves. However, sometimes those dark mental waves have an effect, regardless of all of this work that these beings of air are exercising as a favor to us as a fallen humanity. And Samael tells us dark mental waves can only cause harm when the victim does not know how to love or how to forgive. So what do we do with all this? I mean, by now, it is clear we must be careful with how we use our spoken word. We must be harmonious, aesthetically pleasing. It must be like a symphony. That ideally, that is where we need to head. This is in the direction that we must go. So how do we take this knowledge? How do we link this thing to that surp orteos, to the surp skiros, to the surp athanatos, so that there is the right influence of the being, so that the consciousness is active, actively negating the inferior emotion, actively negating the inferior thought, enabling the work of our Divine Mother? How do we make that practical? Well, the answer is so simple. It is making an effort to live a rich internal life. It is all based on seeking to eliminate what is inferior in us, on seeing the birth of these faculties and these virtues and learning how to use them. But most of all, it is serving others. And Samael gives us some guidance on how to do that on a day-to-day basis. He tells us, the lion of the law is fought with the scale. He says when the lower law is transcended by a higher law, the higher law washes away the inferior law. He says, do good deeds so you can pay your debts. What does that mean? That means that we must learn to work, not only with the archons of karma, but we must work in accordance to the decrees of the law. And so when he says, fight the lion of the law with the scale, as you observe this image from one of those ancient Egyptian papyri, we can see Anubis with his ritual mask, and he is receiving the soul of one who has disincarnated. And notice that in the scale, there are two things. There is a vessel that is meant to contain all of the good deeds, all of that substance of sacrifice that we can generate in our lives. And on the other plate of the scale, what we see is a feather. That is the Mahat feather. You know how light a feather is. And the archons of the law are looking for us to have enough good deeds to exceed the weight of the Mahat feather. We must do good deeds so that we can pay our debts. I mean, Samael gives some very crystal clear examples so that we can extrapolate from them and understand how to apply this. He says, if they're going to take you prisoner, so that doesn't happen to you, then do something so that you can give freedom to other people. If you feel like you're being oppressed, work so that others are not oppressed. If you think that your child is going to die, go and do something so that you can help heal the children of your neighbor. He says, are you in misery? Give what you have left to the hungry. Sacrifice your efforts in the benefits of others. Samael says, pray. Use the power of your creative word to pray to the lords of karma, and you will be heard. And this is the way in which we should be living our lives. Serving and sacrificing for others, because he who has receives, and the more he gives, the more he receives. That is the law. The law will always give us exactly what we deserve and will not keep anything from us and will not give us more than what we deserve at any moment of our existence. So when we choose inferior stuff, our life will get a lot of inferior things. But when we choose things that are edifying and dignifying, then our life becomes edifying and dignifying as well. And when we are using our creative word, that should be our focus. That the things that we say, that they are edifying and that they are dignifying. And with the word divinity, in the many forms that it takes, it sends its avatars, its messengers to convey specific messages. We are in the fifth race, and we have received the fifth of the seven to reveal one of those seven hidden truths. I mean, Gabriel and Raphael, Uriel, Michael, they all came in previous existences, in previous humanities, and unveiled a truth to each one of them. That is the mission of the avatars. And so that we start speaking about the meaning of the cow and Taurus. Pritu is an avatar of Vishnu. In the Hindu pantheon, Vishnu is that manifestation of the cosmic Christ. And Pritu is an avatar of Vishnu. And Pritu was celebrated as a king who gave earth its name, Prithvi. You will remember Prithvi as the Tattva of earth. And here we can see Pritu chasing the earth goddess. And notice that the earth goddess is presented as a white cow. Prithvi, this beautiful white cow, she agreed to give her milk to humanity. But of course, we're not seeing milk rain. That milk, symbolic, is given to us as the world's grain and vegetation. It is the sustenance that keeps us alive. Not only on the food that we consume, but on the air that we breathe, on the energies that we transmute. This symbol of the sacred cow exists in all of the ancient cultures. As a matter of fact, you can see here Hermes. Hermes stealing the cow from Zeus, the sun. In the story of Io, Io was a mortal woman that Zeus was pursuing, so he sent her a message in dreams so that she would join him in the fields. And when she realized what Zeus wanted, she ran away. Hera was watching intently, and she came down from Olympus, and Zeus took Hera and turned Io into a cow so that Hera would not recognize it. But Hera knew, and she asked for the cow as a gift, and Zeus complied. And so we see here in this image where she is placed in a grove under the watch of Argus Panoptes. And Argus Panoptes is the all-seeing, all-great being. It's a beautiful story. So when it comes to Taurus, Taurus is the house of Venus, and Venus is the planet of love. Like in every zodiac is associated with an element. The element of Taurus is the element of earth. So that tells us that there is stability. Particularly, there can be emotional stability. The metal is the metal of copper. Copper traditionally is used to symbolize the woman. And symbolizing the woman, it indicates that it is a negative element. A negative element meaning an element that receives. The stone of Taurus, the emerald and the agate, I'm going to say, for lack of a better ability to say it in a different language. And the perfume of Taurus is the aromatic herb. The plant of Taurus is birch. The flower is thorn. The color of Taurus is green. And the key word of Taurus is love. Because the metal is copper, the house is Venus, the day of Taurus is Friday, which is Viernes, the day of Venus. And of course, the ruler of Taurus is Archangel Uriel, the archetype of Venus itself. Now, there are two genii who are the archetypes of the constellation of Taurus. And the names of the genii are Baghdad and Araziel. If we're working with those divine beings of the constellation of Taurus, when we invoke the genii of Taurus, those great masters, Baghdad and Araziel. Taurus usually starts around April 20th and goes to around May 19th. There is some fluctuation in terms of hours that sometimes can lead one day forward, one day backward. All depends on the position of the sun, etc. But those are trivial details, and we don't get caught in those. So sometime around April 20th, May 19th. The influence of Taurus is directly on the neck, thus the creative larynx. And it influences not only the neck, but the nape and the ears. The light of Aries that we received in our past exercises, as it flows into Taurus together with the mantra Aum, awakens the faculties of the thyroid gland. And when that light develops in the thyroid, we start awakening the magical ear. So we slowly start perceiving things that the ears of the flesh cannot perceive. We start hearing not only the things of the ultra, but we start gaining a more profound understanding on the teachings that the masters are giving us. We know that Venus is the ineffable star of love, and Taurus is Venusian. So the natives of Taurus, for those of you natives of Taurus, you are very loving. You love intensely. Lamentably in life, you always experience great disappointments on things that are associated to love. It may be on someone like a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or spouse or wife, but it could also be matters of love associated with your siblings, with your parents. The natives of Taurus, they are very gentle. They are very industrious, hard workers, but sometimes they can be aggressive like the bull. They can be tenacious. They can be gluttons. They can be romantic and sensual. They love music. They love dance. They love beauty. And a thing about natives of Taurus is that they are wonderful for all kinds of manual arts. In all of the zodiacs, there are creatures within the zodiac that are of a higher nature and others that are of a not so high nature. So the mediocre type of Taurus tends to be a person that is selfish, can be belligerent, passionate, easy to anger, somebody who's very prideful. The superior type of Taurus, full of love, loves classical music, loves wisdom. He is moved to serve others and work for humanity. Nevertheless, all of these natives of Taurus, they are comprehensive, they are sincere. They can be very good parents. They can be good brothers. They can be very, very good citizens. And with Taurus ruling the creative larynx, Venus has a direct influence over the thyroid gland. Taurus also rules the parathyroid gland that is influenced by Mars, the larynx, and the neck. And so it is said that the natives of Taurus experience the battle between Venus and Mars. Venus, that is all love and affinity, and Mars, that is action, force, and war. Samael tells us that the larynx is also a sexual womb where speech is produced. And it is in our thyroid gland that we find the magnetic center of the magic ear. We're going into the practices of Taurus. These practices of Taurus that Rachel will be sharing with you, they awaken the faculty of clairaudience. And the natives of Taurus, though they are reserved and conservative, they can tenaciously walk the path of life. So let's go ahead. So let's go ahead and see if I can open the microphone for Rachel. There you go.
Thank you. One of the first practices in the zodiac course of Taurus that Master Samael shares is his theurgical work with the stars. In the Manual of Practical Magic, the Master speaks more in depth about the art of working with the stars. Through these theurgical works, we can solve our problems and we can do selfless service for others. Of course, when the law allows. In the zodiacal course of Taurus, he explains this work with Archangel Uriel, the ruler of the planet Venus. Working with this star, we can solve any matter related to love, marriages, and women. Venus is also associated to anything related to perfumes, music, plastic arts, dramatic arts, and poetry. For the practice that is in the Taurus lesson in practical astrology, we outline the steps on this slide. We begin this work by first invoking the innermost, your being, and concentrating on your heart. We will then ask to transport ourselves to the heart temple of Venus. Once we arrive, we do the salutations to the guardians of that temple, crossing our arms on our chest, the right over the left, and bowing to the right, saying Jakin, and then bowing to the left and saying Boaz. We then walk into the temple and we invoke Archangel Uriel 3 times in the name of the Christ, by the power of Christ, and by the majesty of Christ. Then we will sing the mantra to invoke a master. That mantra is the same that we always use. It's Antia Dauna Sastasa. It goes Antia Dauna Sastasa. We state our petition. For Venus, Master Samael, he gives an example to help a woman who is abandoned in misery by a suitor. You can also ask for a blessing for a couple who's getting married, and you can ask for help with the great work. Really, you can ask for anything that has to do with matters of love. Once we state our petition, we will then ask that it be according to the law, and then we ask for a choir of angels to carry out the work. They will sing, and with the word, they'll create. If the karma allows, it will be granted. And if the petition is not granted, it will not manifest, and you will be shown the clock of destiny. We then give thanks, and we close the practice. So that is a work that is for working with Venus. And actually, it's the same work that we do with any of the stars. And also for the constellation, the principal stars in the constellation. The next practice is the vocalization of the vowel E, which sounds like A. We do this daily for 1 hour during the time of Taurus. The vowel A causes the thyroid gland, which is the center of the magical ear, to vibrate. With the vowel A, clairaudience awakens, giving the power to hear in the internal worlds. The vowel A develops clairvoyance of the mental body and gives a conceptual synthesis and power to penetrate into the meaning of the words. Now, for the last exercise of Taurus, this is the one we will be doing together today. We will transport ourselves to the heart temple of the constellation of Taurus, just like we explained for Venus. And then we will do the salutations to the guardians of the temple. We'll walk into the temple, and then we will invoke the ruler, Archangel Uriel, and the elders, Baghdad and Araziel. And we'll ask them to come and to give us a treatment. Then we will do the mantra Aum 4 times. And we will imagine that accumulated light in the head from the practice of Aries descending into the throat with the vowel with A. And then during U or O, we imagine the light flooding into the throat. And then in M, closing the lips, we're going to expel or cast out any refuse from the throat. And we're going to do this 4 times. Do we have any questions before we get started? Ricardo, is the microphone open for them to be able to unmute themselves?
Oh, that is a good question.
Or you can write it in the chat if you have any questions. I don't see anything, so we're going to get started. All right. So we're going to begin our practice. You can sit down in a comfortable chair, an armchair, Master Samael says, or you can sit in a relaxed meditative posture, closing your eyes and removing all thoughts from your mind. We're going to do this for about 5 minutes. And if you like, during this time, you can do the mantra Hamsa, like pranayama, to prepare yourself. So we're going to begin now. Focusing inward on our heart, on our innermost. We pray. Father of mine, transport yourself to the principal star of Taurus. And once there, at the doors of the heart temple, make the salutations to the guardians. Crossing your arm right over the left. To the right, bow Chakin. To the left, OS. Enter through the doors and take the 7 sacred steps inside. We invoke the ruler of Taurus, Archangel Uriel, and the 2 elders of Taurus, Baghdad and Arziel. Archangel Uriel, Baghdad and Arziel. Archangel Uriel, Baghdad and Arziel. We invoke you in the name of the Christ, by the power of Christ, by the majesty of Christ. Mantra Antia da uno sasasa. Antia da una sastasa. Archangel Uriel, Baghdad, and Araziel, please have compassion for us. Prepare us and awaken the powers of the larynx. Restore the faculty of clairaudience. Cure us of any laryngeal sicknesses. Heal our thyroid and our inner ears of any imbalances. And if it's in accordance to the law, heal those that we name that have illnesses, imbalances associated to the larynx, the thyroid, and the ears. You may mention them now silently. Now we're going to do the mantra Aum 4 times. Again, imagining the light descending from your head to your throat on A, then flooding the throat on O or U, and on M, expelling the refuse. Thank you, Archangel Uriel, Master Baghdad, and Master Araziel for your assistance. We ask that this work materialize and it crystallize according to the great law, the will of my Father and the universal charity. May this work result in virtue and triumph. We do the sign of the cross in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The microcosmic star, by the Almighty and powerful, Tetragrammaton, and seal it with the rune Sig. And that concludes our practice for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to work together. I wish you all healing and profound awakening and peace. If you like, you can continue the practices of Taurus until we meet for Gemini. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us in the group chat or in private message. And I wish you inferential peace.
Well, we have unsecured the microphones, and everyone has the opportunity to open the microphones and ask any questions if you were to have any. Very well. If there are no questions, dear friends, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. May all beings be happy.
Amen.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Hey, good night, Reno.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, Gabby.
All right. Thank you
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
very much.